Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn. Okay, welcome everybody. Here we are at Living Chassidus for our life skills series yet again. And we have the great zchus of having Alana Cohen. She's speaking about the truth about gut health. Alana is a mom of three, author of Let Kids Be Kids, The Parent's Guide to Gut Health, which I actually have the great zchus of being able to show it to you right here. Incredible book. Definitely look that up. She also wrote The Buggies in Bella's Belly. And this is the kids version. It's like the most incredible kids book. I definitely suggest getting that. And she's also the founder of the Good Buggies. So Alana is going to speak to us tonight about what is gut health, why it affects our children, and also why it affects us, and how to actually make change. How can we take this and what are we meant to do with this information? So I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you guys so much for watching. And a loving reminder that we have all of our recordings on our YouTube channel. You can search Living Chassidus. We also have all of our recordings on our podcasting. So go check out your favorite podcasting platform and look up Living Chassidus and subscribe over there. So thank you, Alana, and let's get started.
Thanks so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be talking to you guys today and to be able to share this information with you guys, because I think it's such crucial information, especially for this generation, such an important topic. And so, all right, we'll get started. So let's see. So basically I'll be talking about, what is gut health? Why is it such an important topic today? And different aspects of it, the gut-brain connection, inflammation, how to recognize symptoms, and getting started. So basically, I am, I think you guys got this already, I was introduced. So but I'll just go over briefly. I'm a wife and a mom of three, the founder of the Good Buggies, which is basically a company that I started that focuses on kids' gut health. And basically providing the resources, education to families and their kids to basically just help get this information out there. And basically, really, what it's about is creating the resources that I wish I had when I started on this journey. Because when I was starting on this, I really had to felt like I had to learn everything on my own. I didn't really. There wasn't any kind of guide out there, and I wanted to kind of create it for other parents now to make it easier for you guys, because I really don't think that parents should be going through this alone. And I think it's crazy that this information is not handed to each parent. I feel like this is crucial, vital information. So I just really want to get it out there. I'm also a speech pathologist, and I have my master's in science from Columbia University. And that actually, I'll explain a little bit later, but that kind of guided my approach in a way. I always had this love for communication. And so I knew that when I was going to work on gut health in my family, I knew we couldn't just, make a bunch of changes and that's it. I knew that the communication of it was going to be really, to me, almost the key part. So I'll explain a bit about that later too. Okay, so this is a quote from Dr. David Perlmutter, and he says that everything about our health, how we feel both emotionally and physically, hinges on the state of our microbiome. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my story and how I got into this, because like I said, I'm a speech pathologist. So how did I get into gut health? I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a, in that field. But as you guys probably know already, being a parent, you have to learn everything on your feet. So I was thrown into the world of gut health. And if there's one thing about me, I love to dive deep when I get into something. So I learned everything I could about it, but I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into it. So when my daughter was about 3 years old, I started noticing a bunch of different symptoms that she was having. I didn't even know, I wouldn't even call them symptoms at the time. They were just things I was noticing that didn't seem to be related. The biggest symptom, I guess, or the most concerning to me was her mood swings. I started noticing that she would just get very moody. She would kind of like be able to, um, she would just like kind of change her mood at the drop of a hat. Like there was no logic, no way to tell when she was going to snap. It was like, um, you know, it was people talk about it as, you know, the terrible twos or three natures, you know, like there's these as if children are supposed to have these types of tantrums and unpredictability, which, you know, there is an element of that, of course. You know, there's these terms didn't come from nowhere. There's you know, children are not fully developed, so they're not able to manage their emotions so well. But these types of behaviors, I started to realize that it wasn't really normal, even though, you know, you tell your stories to your friends and they commiserate and they have similar stories too of, you know, the children throwing a tantrum and, you know, in the middle of a grocery store and all these different things. Everyone can relate. But I finally realized that just because it was common, it didn't mean it was normal. And I started to get concerned. I started to think she was having other things too, sensory symptoms. She would have trouble putting on her socks and her shoes. She would like, you know, feel uncomfortable. She would like, I had to get her special socks without seams. And even that, it was like painful watching her try to put it on. And then like at the last minute, she would just rip it off because it wasn't comfortable. And it was really getting to the point where it was painful to watch. The other symptoms too, she started having like a phlegmy cough. She started, there were some periods of like rashes, different things. She had some itching, different things that I had gone to the pediatrician about. And it was kind of just brushed off, or they looked into it. They said, it's nothing, you know, but there was that, you know, I knew that something was up. And then finally, somehow things paused and I just put the pieces together. I realized that all of these different things that were going on with her, maybe they were related. And I started searching, you know, reading everything that I could, trying to figure out what it could be, what's going on with her. Because I realized that, you know, maybe she's sick in a way, you know, there's something going on. And I came across the world of gut health, Candida, and I I read about it. I thought a lot of the symptoms matched with her. I ended up seeking out a holistic nutritionist, and she guided us in lab testing, and we did stool testing for her, and they found pathogenic levels of Candida in her gut. And not only that, from having had this pathogen living in her for so long, I mean, so long, she was 3 years old, but even still for this amount of time, she had very high markers of chronic inflammation, which is a term that you don't expect to hear again, like in a 3-year-old. You know, chronic inflammation, you think of that in our, you know, more elderly population or middle age. So, you know, I was like shocked. I mean, I had already had a suspicion that something was going on, but like, you know, I was confused. Like I thought we ate healthy. I didn't understand. So I just started learning everything I could. Of course, I was, you know, excited also to have a reason for what was going on. You know, there was something that was bothering her to the point that her body wasn't functioning right. She had a pathogen living in her body. You know, this I could help her. You know, I felt like a huge sense of relief at the same time too that I could help her. So basically, we ended up, with the help of this holistic nutritionist, we ended up treating it, changing her whole diet. I'll go into a little bit more detail about how to do this, but she did a 180, my daughter. She was, I don't want to say a different person, but she was herself again. It was like, you have to see it to believe it, because I never would have understood what kind of impact just changing these simple changes could make until I saw it for myself. She had no mood swings. Like, I mean, you know, general, she wouldn't get stuck in anything. You know, it was not a mood swing. It was just a regular emotions, you know, all that we all have. But she wouldn't get stuck in a tantrum anymore. She actually didn't have any trouble putting on her socks and shoes. The sensory symptoms totally went away, which was like amazing for me to see. she had also been wearing, like she was wearing, even her clothes, she had been wearing clothes that were like too big on her because, nothing was comfortable. And she went from that to just being able to wear regular socks, her shoes. She put them on without a struggle, regular clothes that were like in the back of her drawer because she hadn't worn them in ever since I bought them. Her eyes were bright again, her smile, she had that sweet smile back, and she was able to, she was more social, even, at school. Just so many changes I saw in her. And I knew that once I saw that, I knew this was real. I knew it was amazing. And I knew that I had to stick with it. And in sticking with it, I knew that I had to teach these skills, teach this information to my daughter in a way that it would stick, because she was only 3 at the time. Of course, friends, everyone tells you, oh, what are you going to do? She's just, how can you, a lot of people warn you not to teach your kids about health because they think that it's going to create a bad relationship with food, or it's going to make them sneak, treats at someone else's house. And, how can you restrict your child like that? And so I knew I had to go about this in the right way and in a healthy way for our family and in an empowering way. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of those techniques too, but and spreading the word, right? So once we saw these types of changes and the amazing world of gut health and what can be done, we had to spread the word. But not only that, when I taught my daughter about everything, when she felt the changes in herself, she was so on board. And she asked me one day, she said, and I had explained everything to her with the story of the buggies that live in our bellies. So she asked if everyone knows about the buggies, and I told her no. And she says, we have to tell them, just very matter of factly. So I decided I had to really go and spread the word, because it's true. Everyone really deserves to know this. So my goal is to let kids be kids again, truly, in the true sense of the term, to help them access their full potential and enjoy their childhood instead of being ridden with these chronic diseases and impairments to their minds and bodies. This generation of problems never encountered before by any generation, and we parents must be armed with the tools to help our kids. So in talking about health, or I guess why this generation is so affected, many people will say, or I've had many people say to me, well, I don't get it. I ate all this junk when I was a kid and I turned out fine. They're going to be fine too. They let them have it. Why are you going to restrict them? I turned out fine. So things, they might have turned out fine, right? In their own definition, who knows, but they feel they turned out fine, but they were not eating the same things that our kids are eating today. Not even close. And they might be eating the same brand names that our kids are eating today. Maybe even it looks like the same packaging still, but it is not anywhere close to what our kids are eating today. And the reason is because many of the ingredients in our kids' foods today were not even invented yet when we were kids, or when our parents were. So things that look the same were definitely not the same. Our kids today are faced with this new ingredient of high fructose corn syrup. From 1970 to 1990, consumption of high fructose corn syrup increased by over 1,000%. GMOs, this is another new one. Over 60% of processed foods on supermarket shelves has GMO soy, GMO corn, or GMO canola. Another problem with the GMOs is that those foods are heavily, heavily sprayed with glyphosate, which has been another name for Roundup. It's been in the news, having disastrous effects on the gut and being linked even to cancer. Glyphosate, pesticides, are also used on farms today at ridiculous levels. And there's plenty of residue that's been found in different foods. It's sprayed even on crops like wheat, oats, to the point where some people are even suggesting that gluten is such a problem just because of its contamination with glyphosate. But there are other reasons too. And artificial everything, our products have artificial colors, flavors, artificial or preservatives. It's really terrifying when you look at the state of many of the things on the shelf today and how these didn't even exist just a few decades ago. Okay, so, and right, so the relative who says, oh, but I turned out fine, right? Or I was eating the same thing, I turned out fine. Our kids are not eating the same things, and they are unfortunately not turning out fine. Actually, I didn't put this one on here, but there's an estimate that about 50% of children now are have one or more chronic illness. 1 in 10 kids are estimated to have ADHD. 1 in 59 kids have been identified with autism spectrum disorder, which is rising at a very high rate. That's a 33% increase from 2010, which is relatively recent, and it's still rising. 1 in 5 school-age kids are now estimated to be obese, which affects metabolic health. And there are actually even more kids who are metabolically unhealthy who are not obese. You could be thin or any weight and still have metabolic issues. 1 in 6 US children aged 2 to 8 years old has a diagnosed mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder, which to me is shocking. I mean, that's a huge, huge number. 1 in 13 children now have food allergies, which is a 50% increase from 1997 to between 1997 to 2011. And 7.5 children under the age of 18 years currently has asthma. So our kids are clearly not turning out fine. Something is going on. Something is different than it used to be, and they're getting affected. Okay, so some researchers estimate that up to 90% of all diseases can be traced back to the gut. So what is gut health? I'm just going to kind of explain a few of the key terms about gut health. So we have the microbiome, which is a complex ecosystem of trillions of microbes, which are bacteria, yeast, parasites, all the things that live in our gut. And this is located in our bodies. The majority of our microbiome lives in our digestive system, but it plays a role in many of our other organs, or really all of our other organs as well. We are their host. We are the host to all these little bacteria, yeast, all these little microbes. The functions of the gut. Okay, so what, when you talk about what health, so what is the gut supposed to do? So these are some of the functions of the gut. The microbes in our gut help to make the vitamins and nutrients available to our body. So the foods that we eat, they help digest those foods and make the vitamins and absorb into our body and available to our body. They digest our food, our fiber, they manage our appetite. They regulate and secrete hormones, including those for brain function. So for example, like serotonin, a huge percentage of serotonin is actually secreted not in the brain. So if gut health is off, that's, you're not you're definitely not going to have proper brain function. The gut is also responsible for filtering toxins out, and it produces healing compounds and helps the immune system. It's huge in immune health, a big role. Okay, so why is gut health affecting our kids more than any other generation before us? Well, I talked about some of the ingredients that are available today, but there are 4 main reasons that the bad bacteria in our microbiome is taking over in our kids' gut today. So the number 1 reason, or the first reason, is that today we don't have enough good bacteria to stop the bad guys. So we are not taking in, or I should explain, in past generations, our ancestors, our grandparents, great-grandparents, our ancestors were taking in good bacteria every single day. Every single day they were taking their probiotics the natural way. They didn't know they were called probiotics, but they were just eating fermented foods. And fermented foods or fermentation is a special process that it preserves food by basically, while also breaking it down and making it more digestible. So the good bacteria that are present on organic produce will break down that vegetable or fruit, whatever it is, and they'll break down the anti-nutrients, the starches, the sugars, to make the food more nutritious and bioavailable to us. And they are actively fermenting and breaking down this food and creating colonies within this food. So by the time you eat them, they are packed with live and active good bacteria. And they also they preserve the food that they are breaking down. So this was very common. This was done, if you think about the invention of refrigerators, it's actually a relatively recent invention, even though it seems like it's something we've had forever. People used to ferment their food. That was the primary way of preserving their food. They would grow their food locally, seasonally, and they would preserve whatever grew that season by fermenting it and putting it in a cellar so that they could enjoy their produce the rest of the in the other until the next growing season. So this was like a very, very common. Every single culture has examples of fermented food. Every single one, from sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented pickles, but not the kind that you see in the grocery store today. Unfortunately, one of the other reasons why we don't have enough of this good bacteria to stop the bad guys is because even though we're eating foods that look like the fermented foods of our ancestors, this probiotic food, the store-bought versions of these foods like pickles, sauerkraut, that were traditionally fermented are now unfortunately made with synthetic preservatives that just kill all the bacteria, all the good and all the bad bacteria, in order to be shelf stable. So they've taken this amazing powerhouse of a food and put synthetic preservatives and also food coloring. By the way, I walked through it's so sad to walk through all these foods that are meant to be health foods that are just destroyed with synthetic preservatives and food coloring. So anyway, we don't have enough good bacteria these days to stop the bad guys because we are not eating fermented foods like our ancestors did. Number 2, why this generation is having more trouble than others. The good bacteria that we do have is not strong enough to stop the bad bacteria from taking over. Why is it not strong enough? Because we're not feeding our good bacteria that we do have. Like I said before, we are kind of their host. They need us to survive. They need us to feed them. And our good bacteria likes to eat fiber from whole fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. They like these whole foods. And many of our kids, they're checking a few boxes of these healthy, maybe they had a bite of broccoli at dinner, right? And it's like, or maybe it's maybe they have a few fruits here and there, but is it really enough to keep whole colonies of bacteria alive and kicking, especially when they have to compete with all the bad that they're taking in to that feeds the bad bacteria, which is also more than ever before. So their good bacteria also gets weakened by so many of the toxins from food, environment, chronic stress, and lack of good quality sleep. But basically our kids' good bacteria is just not so strong anymore. Okay, number 3. We are constantly feeding the bad bacteria today. Bad bacteria thrives off of refined sugar, carbs, and many of the ingredients in processed packaged foods. So when we feed the bad bacteria these processed foods, they get stronger and stronger, and they continue to take over the real estate of the gut, kicking out the good guys, and then they keep demanding more of these foods to stay strong and in power. The average American child is taking in added sugar with every meal, even if they're not big snackers and don't seem to have a sweet tooth. These are just some surprising foods that I found that actually have high fructose corn syrup that was one of the most surprising things to me when I started on this health journey, because I thought that we ate pretty healthy as a family. I had no idea how many of these kind of toxic ingredients make their way into regular food items. So for example, like, Heinz ketchup, Ritz crackers, you don't think of these as sweet, granola bars. You think of that as like a healthy option. Many brands of bread have high fructose corn syrup. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it's the peanut butter, and the jelly and the bread, they all have high fructose corn syrup in it. It's crazy. Applesauce, it's flavored yogurts, sauces, condiments. You'll see once you start looking, and I know we're busy, we don't have a lot. Usually we don't have so much time to look at the labels in the supermarket. We're running from things, but once you start noticing, you're going to be shocked at how much how much added sugar, how much high fructose corn syrup, and how much of these toxic ingredients make their way into our food items, not just our junk. So kids today, unfortunately, are tasked with this challenge of facing all these bad buggy foods that we are constantly feeding the bad bacteria. Okay, right. So like I said before, but it's so common to think, but I think we eat pretty healthy, and it's not just about junk. And these are just some images that I found helpful. Let me just move this over. Oh, this was another fun fact. 200 years ago, the average American ate 2 pounds of sugar per year. Now, the average American eats 3 pounds of sugar in 1 week. It's insane. It's crazy. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this is just, again, to show some of the surprising ingredients that we have to face. And what our food looks like today is the main point of this exercise. So this is from a holistic pediatrician on Instagram, Dr. Anna Maria Temple. She posts a lot of great stuff, but she posted this a while ago to see if you can guess the food from the ingredients. And honestly, one of the pieces of advice I give is that if you don't have the ingredients on a label in your own pantry, if you wouldn't cook with these ingredients, don't buy it. Why do you want someone else to put them in your food? So I don't know. So you could take your guess of what this might be before I turn the slide. It's Gatorade. Next one. I mean, it's such these long lists, and this isn't even the nutrition facts. I think the ingredients label gives a lot more information than the nutrition facts, but those are also important to look at. Okay, so this one is muffins. Oh, okay, this is just to show real food doesn't need a label. So can you guess what this is from the ingredients? Of course, it's just a mandarin orange. And this long list, crazy, so much. Soybean oil, TBHQ, terrible, really terrible for the gut. Soy is very damaging. Soy, just an interesting side note about soy is that traditionally in Asian cultures, soy was only ever eaten fermented. They actually thought that it was very damaging to the gut, and the only way you could even consume it was having it fermented. And now it's just grown, and they use the soybean oil and add it to everything, and it's very damaging for many people. A lot of people have trouble tolerating soy. A lot of colors added also. Okay, that was Pop-Tarts, which thankfully, right, some of these items are thankfully not kosher, so you don't have to worry, but there are plenty of items in the kosher world that have the same ingredient list. Don't worry. So another point, in America especially, our kids are being tasked with this hard challenge, whereas in other countries, like the UK, France, some countries in Europe, Austria, they actually don't even allow many of the ingredients that we have in their foods. And the versions of the same exact brands will actually make their products healthier in these other countries and use the kind of cheaper and more toxic ingredients in the US version. So here's ketchup with, again, there's that high fructose corn syrup and natural flavoring. Tomato concentrate also is the first ingredient, whereas in the UK, sounds like a great recipe. They've just made from tomatoes, vinegar, sugar, salt, and spices and herbs. Sounds great. Frosted Flakes in the UK, they add, in the US, they add BHT, which they call for freshness. Look out for that in a lot of cereals. It's a very damaging ingredient for the gut, BHT, and they don't allow it in the UK version. Quaker's oatmeal in the US has all of these additives, maltodextrin, flavored and colored fruit pieces, treated with sodium sulfite, artificial strawberry flavor, citric acid, red 40, guar gum. Look how they do it in the UK. Whole grain, rolled oats, sugar, freeze
Natural flavors
dried
is
raspberry
also
pieces. What? Say it
natural
again.
flavorings is like corn syrup.
I didn't hear natural. Oh, natural blueberry. What did you say?
Flavoring.
Natural flavoring is also not, it's a very, very vague term, and there are a lot of different sources for natural flavors. But this list, I would take this list any day over this one. Like, yeah, right. So here they use the actual fruit, freeze-dried raspberry and strawberry pieces instead of the artificial and coloring. Be aware of what's called greenwashing or health washing. They'll, try to catch you, make a product look really healthy. Now more real fruit. They have strawberries right on the package, whole grains, no high fructose corn syrup. Sounds great. But it's really like, there's nothing good in there. And the fruit, the most concentrated ingredients are at the top and the least at the bottom. Finally, you could find the fruit that they're mentioning, more real fruit, all the way at the bottom here, next to the corn syrup, strawberry puree concentrate. So you have to really be aware of these marketing tactics. Okay, so now that was for the bad buggy food out there. That's how we're feeding all our bad buggies. There's all these toxins that snuck their way into the food system. But now another reason why this generation is having more trouble than others, or more trouble than any generation before in terms of this gut health issue, is because of widespread antibiotic use. So antibiotics, of course, are very important in life-threatening situations and in bacterial infections. They kill the bacteria. So they kill the bad bacteria that's causing the infection, but they also kill the good bacteria. And many pediatricians are now becoming more aware of this. I know that pediatricians are working to prescribe antibiotics less often, or to, kind of be more mindful about when they're prescribing them. But it's still very widespread, and it's still something that most of our kids have been on within their lifetime. So what happens after taking an antibiotic? So like we said, it kills the bacteria, but then yeast, which is also part of our microbiome, yeast is not a bacteria, and it then has the opportunity to take over the real estate that the bacteria once held. Because when the bacteria is wiped out, there's kind of like a clean slate, and this yeast is very opportunistic and comes right in. Plus, if after taking an antibiotic, the child continues to eat foods that feed the bacteria, the bad bacteria will also grow too. And so the bad bacteria and bad yeast will claim that space that was once held by the good guys too. So if you're not taking in lots of fermented foods or a good quality probiotic with active cultures, you won't have a strong enough army to fight those bad guys off. So here's some sources of antibiotic exposure. This one is overlooked a lot, but many, many women are put on antibiotics during birth, or right before delivery. If you're getting a C-section, or if you test positive for group B strep, you're likely put on IV antibiotics, often several rounds of it, up until the delivery of your baby, right before birth. And so this is something I want to point out, because I have a lot of parents tell me, when they're talking about some of the symptoms that they notice in their kids, or even mood type things that they notice in their kids, and they say, but it's just his personality. They've always been like that. Ever since he was a baby, he always cried, he always this, always, whatever it is, ever since he was a baby. And oftentimes, if you dig a little deeper, it's not necessarily that it's their personality. This person could have been on, sometimes you hear in their story, oh, I was on antibiotics during my pregnancy, or I was on antibiotics, in the hospital, I tested positive for group B strep, or the baby was born by C-section. And then they say, oh, and, so how would you know if this is their personality or not? This could be that they had gut health issues from when they were born. If they never, their gut was missing out on that good colonization of good bacteria, then remember the functions of the gut that we talked about before. Those good bacteria were not, absorbing the vitamins to their body well. They were not secreting the hormones for brain function. They were not doing all of these important things that would make their body and brain work right. So oftentimes, many of these issues can start at birth. So it's even if somebody had issues since birth, it's still something that could be from gut health and not just a personality thing. And very kids.
Alana, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I want to mention we're actually, Mitzvah Hashem, in a few weeks, we're actually having a midwife who's going to speak about this exact topic. So
wow. Amazing.
Just a heads up.
Oh, amazing. You guys are so lucky. I wish I had this when I was even like a few years ago. Would have been, and even now too, it's amazing. I'm really glad that I met you guys. This is great. So another source of antibiotic exposure, you guys probably know this, but common childhood illnesses, strep throat, ear infections, and many many viral infections are treated with antibiotics just in case they may be bacterial. And this is just another antibiotic exposure. Parents. So even if your kids have never been on antibiotics, most of us have been on antibiotics in our lifetime. And so that changed our own microbiome that we can pass on to our children. So if you were on antibiotics and never worked on healing your own gut, you're going to be passing on a very different microbiome to your child than your parents passed on to you, and your grandparents passed on to your parents. And also, if let's say you were on antibiotics during birth or before birth, and you didn't work on healing your gut after, which I don't no blame. I mean, there's so much going on after birth. You've got to work on healing everything. But then when you're breastfeeding your baby, that's another way to pass on good bacteria, but you might not be passing on the same good bacteria because yours was wiped out also from being on the IV antibiotics. Also, the foods that we're eating, the livestock, much of it is treated with antibiotics. Actually, 80% of the antibiotics used in the US are fed to animals raised for food, which is just a statistic that I was disgusted by. I could not believe that the number was that's what most of the antibiotics are used for in our country. Okay, so we get it, right? So the bad bacteria grow, but what happens next? So this imbalance causes poor gut health and inflammation, which are at the root of most modern diseases. And I'm going to talk, okay, so the gut-brain connection is something that was really, really interesting to me, and just very important in general, especially like I talked about with my own daughter, how the sensory symptoms and the mood symptoms were so concerning to me. It was such a relief when I found out that it wasn't something I had to treat behaviorally or, with medication or something like that, but it was actually something that you can heal through the gut. It was amazing. So the gut and the brain are actually very, very intricately connected, to the point that the gut is now labeled by many, many scientists and researchers as the second brain. So the gut and the brain communicate with each other via the gut-brain axis, which is connected through the vagus nerve, which is a large nerve that runs through the body, connecting the gut and the brain, doing other things as well. So the gut and the brain communicate with each other back and forth. The brain talks to the gut and the gut talks to the brain through this axis. So chemicals and hormones that are important for brain function are made in the gut, not in the brain, which I mentioned a little bit before, but like, for example, serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, a lot of these critical hormones are produced in the gut. So if the gut is not functioning adequately, then it's not going to be, it could be misfiring, and not secreting enough of the right hormones, having imbalances in the brain, things like that. Now, another aspect of the gut-brain connection is that it is the inflammation aspect. So when there's too much bad bacteria in the gut, the immune system puts the body in a state of inflammation. And chronic inflammation in the gut leads to misfiring and poor function in the brain as well. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that too. Okay, so what is inflammation? Right, this is like a key word that also keeps on coming up, and a lot of people talking about this, this key word. So what is inflammation? So inflammation is actually like this amazing tool that our body has. It's actually not a negative thing. It's amazing. When you get an injury, for example, a sprained ankle, or you get hurt somewhere in your body, this is the body's way of marking the site of the injury, by making it red. It becomes inflamed, it becomes swollen, and it basically marks it as a site for the body to know, okay, tend to this now. The body knows, and you know, right? Because when you have a sprained ankle, it looks swollen, it looks sore. You stay off of it. You might put it up. You're not walking on it the same. You'll rest and tend to your healing, and your body knows to send healing compounds down to it, and it takes care of it. So it's really amazing. But what happens when there's inflammation inside our body? And what happens when the injury is not one acute painful event, but many, many ongoing little pricks? And what if the injury never stops happening? So that is chronic inflammation. And that is a very, very hard state for the body to be in. And it's hard for us to live with the body in that state. And that's when you start to see a lot of these symptoms come out. So after these acute injuries from toxins or bacterial overgrowth, these are the little pricks, right? So the immune system marks the gut as an area of high alert to respond to, right? The same way that it would an injury. The balance of our gut bacteria tells the immune system how to act and react. So when there's too much bad bacteria, the immune system recognizes this is a problem and switches the immune system into an inflammatory state to deal with the problems. The gut doesn't work so well during this time. Like think back to the sprained ankle, right? You're not walking on it. So the gut is also kind of like a little slow, not working so well. And this is when you start to feel those symptoms. Gut functions do not resume to normal. The absorption of vitamins, and remember what the gut is responsible for. So the absorption of vitamins, communication with the brain, producing hormones for mood, brain function, and sleep. An inflamed gut leads to an inflamed brain. It can also lead to leaky gut, which is another topic. So what are some symptoms, some things to look for? Symptoms are always a sign from your body. The same way that inflammation is actually like a good thing, symptoms are actually like an amazing way that our body tries to communicate with us. So the problem is that in this generation, a lot of people are taught to kind of just, play whack-a-mole and put a Band-Aid on symptoms and try to just make them go away. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. And you ignore the symptoms or just take a medicine, make them go away, but you never look at what's causing the symptom in the brain. And so then when you shut down one symptom with the whack-a-mole, it comes out your brain, you didn't fix the problem. So it's going to come out in another way somewhere else in your body. It's trying to tell you, tell you to look at what's underneath. So never ignore symptoms, always find out, dig in for what's underneath. So some symptoms of poor gut health are picky eating, because remember, also it goes with sugar, carb cravings. Remember, your gut bacteria manages your appetite, and it also, remember, you're the host for your bacteria. So if your body is taken over by bad bacteria, they're going to crave the types of food that they want to survive and get strong. So oftentimes this is where picky eating comes from. Because it's not about willpower necessarily. It's just that the bad bacteria are asking for a certain food, and your child, it's hard to say no if you don't know, if you're not educated on why, and if you don't know what's going on in your body. Other signs, tummy aches, if a lot of things that like you would go to the doctor for, and the doctor says, it's nothing, or just keep an eye on it. Like your mom intuition, all those symptoms where they're not really sick, but they are sick. Those are a lot of the signs. A bloated looking belly, rashes, skin conditions, eczema, a lot of autoimmune conditions. Sorry, I'm jumping. Allergies, you know, a lot of, I'm not going to get into it now, but a lot of allergies can stem from leaky gut. Also dark circles under the eyes, poor attention, focus, moodiness, excessive, excessive crying, fear, anger, getting stuck. My daughter, before we treated with her gut health, she would just get so stuck in her certain patterns and behaviors that it was so hard to get her out of it. Once we treated the gut, it was like the door was just open. Constipation, diarrhea, lingering phlegmy cough, white tongue, vaginal or rectal itching, reflux, and different autoimmune conditions. So here's just some examples of things that can be inflammatory or can contribute to that chronic inflammation, like those little, all of these things, like maybe you only have a little, if you're saying, oh, it's just a little bit in this food, a little bit in that food, these are all the little pricks that we were talking about, the little, prick, 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 that that is actually a bunch of acute injuries that is damaging the gut. So sugar, especially refined sugars, and like we said before, realizing the amount of sugar that's actually present in our foods and not even just our junk. Artificial sweeteners are super inflammatory too. Food additives, BHT preservatives, any of those highly processed and packaged foods are going to be damaging. Refined oils and refined fats like canola, soybean, and corn oils, refined carbs. Also, another big one that can be inflammatory. Sometimes you are eating all the right things and you're still having trouble, and the little pricks could be from hidden allergens and food activities. So you don't have like a life-threatening reaction, but you're having a mild reaction that you might not be noticing. And over time, but you keep on having these foods every day, and it's really making your body inflamed without really realizing it. So that's actually a big one that affects a lot of people. Toxins from cleaning products, candles, air fresheners. Please, if you have like a Glade plug-in, take it out. It's an endocrine disruptor, hormone disruptor. Once you start noticing these synthetic smells and ingredients, you'll I guess once you will take them out, then you're going to start noticing them. Otherwise, they could kind of like blend in and realize, but they're also very damaging to the gut and the endocrine system. Personal care products. Another one, toxic stress, can be just as inflammatory as food. So just remember, a lot of these ingredients are in the foods that we find most convenient. I know it's hard on us moms today, but the thing to remember is that convenience at the expense of your health is not convenience at all. So remind yourself the not so convenient symptoms that you want to avoid, and ditching a few ingredients will feel like a breeze. And I can tell you from experience, it is so true. It's so true. I would never in the world trade the convenience of those packaged products, for having to, I just can't even imagine, for having to sit through an hour-long tantrum that my daughter can get out of, not be able to wear her clothes, not be able to put on her socks and shoes. It's not even a question of going back to these foods. I don't have any desire to go back to it, and neither does my daughter, to be honest. She doesn't, she recognizes, and now our whole family recognizes that we feel better eating better foods. And that's, I think the key is that this is like a life skill that we want to teach. It's not a restriction. It's something that you can do this is a positive thing that we are doing for ourselves. It's not a negative. This is a gift. Okay, so what do we do now? I'm just gonna, this is just like a very basic, everybody is going to have to follow their own plan in terms of healing the gut, because, even though the gut is like, how do I explain? everybody has different reasons why the gut is not working so well. So everyone has different symptoms that are showing up in different ways. So, and what works for one person, one person might eliminate this food group and it's great for them. Person might eliminate another food group. One person might add in certain types of healing foods and it doesn't work for the other. But the reason, is because everyone is so individual. So you really have to, it's very, very helpful to work with a holistic practitioner. They can help you with lab testing to find out really exactly what's going on inside your body personally, and in terms of a realistic treatment plan for what your specific issues are. And also, even like I mentioned before, some people can have food sensitivities to really foods. So you might be, following some protocol and it's not working for you, and it might just be because you have an allergy or sensitivity to that food. So it's very individual. I can't tell you eat this, don't eat that. But in general, this is the kind of protocol you would follow. So it's very, very simple, honestly, very simple. All you have to do is eliminate the inflammatory foods that are feeding the bad buggies, which we went over in the other slides. Those are the processed foods, refined oils, refined carbs and sugars. Add in more real foods, feed your good buggies. They love to eat the whole foods, fruits, vegetables, things like that, fiber. Add in more good bacteria. So like we talked about, fermented foods that our kids are missing out on in this generation for the first time, compared to other generations. Fermented foods, good quality, live and active probiotics. And of course, add in play, outdoor activity, good quality sleep, reduce stress. These types of things are very, very healing to the body and also inflammation. So it's honestly very, very simple, the bones of it. Okay, so sounds good, right? But now the big question, how can I possibly get my child on board with this? Here she is so picky, I could never do it. I hear this all the time. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but your child's cravings, this is a really crucial point, is that your child's cravings are dictated by what is living in their gut. The bacteria will do whatever it can to survive. So once you wrap your point that they're picky, they're not being picky, their gut bacteria is being picky, you need to kill off those bad bacteria that are telling them to eat these bad foods. And it's going to be, depending on each case, it might be a rough couple days for sure, because the bad bacteria, they don't want to die. They are hanging on by a thread. If that child doesn't eat, whatever food they're craving, those bad bacteria are craving, they are going to, they're soldiers. They're trying to survive. They're hanging on to every last thread. So they're going to put up a big fight. But what happens if they don't get what they want? The bad bacteria, they start to get weaker, right? They didn't get their food. They start to get weaker. Some of them start to die off. Then the next meal, they ask again. They're getting weaker. They want to get strong again. They don't want to lose this bacterial real estate that they gained. They don't get what they want again at this meal, and they start to die off more. And each time it's going to get easier and easier, because the bad bacteria, if they don't get fed, they're going to die off. And that's the key. Once the bad bacteria that's causing these symptoms starts to die off, your child starts to come through again. They can listen to their body. And all of a sudden, for the first time at a meal, you say, oh, do you want to try? Can I give you some of this? And they'll say, yeah. They're just going to be willing. The whole palate changes. It's amazing to see. And I really encourage you all to try it, especially if you have a picky child. It's very, very worthwhile to do. So getting started in a healthy way, how we communicate these changes to our children is what makes the difference between them fighting the changes and embracing them. So I created the buggy protocol, I call it, for how to get your kids involved in their health and how to make these changes in a healthy way that's going to last and that's going to stick with them for life. We mentioned a bit earlier about how many people will, how are you, don't teach your kid about health now because it's just going to make you know, a bad relationship with food, or it's just going to make them sneak food at their friend's house. If you want to know how to do it in a way that they're not going to be sneaking food at their friend's house and they're going to make changes that last and feel good about it, feel empowered and positive about it, this is what I found to be the way. So I'll just briefly go over the principles of the goal. So the first step is to be positive. And I'm going to go over this one tonight, but this is it's basically all about the mindset shift. Your attitude is everything. U is for understanding. That refers to your own understanding of how the body works and what gut health works, how gut health works. So you could cross that off the list because you got it in this presentation. I think you guys have a really good understanding. And teaching your child to understand how his body works. Your child's own understanding is crucial to them wanting to be a part of this. Our kids are not too young or too simplistic about their body. This is they actually are really interested. Think about it, kids are so curious. They want to learn, and they want to learn about their body, and you can teach them, and it just helps with their motivation so much. G, get them on board, for them to know you're on the same team. Very, very important. G, the next G, give up some control. You want to give your kids the opportunity to get to know their body and practice this life skill. So if you're always making their food decisions for them, then they're not going to learn how to listen to their own body, and they're not going to be able to make the types of choices you want them to learn how to make at their friends' houses. If you let them learn in a safe space, you give up some control, and you let them, you give them a safe space, meaning you give them good choices to make, but you let them make choices, and then you don't correct them after. So like, for example, I love doing this with like serving dinner family style. You choose what's on the table, you choose a few dishes with sides, and your kid chooses what they put on their plate. No comments from you, nothing like, oh, why don't you take some of this? Are you sure? Oftentimes kids will take some on their plate, they'll decide what they want, and then, they'll taste something, then they'll take some, the main dish after, or they'll take what they're in the mood for. They're going to learn for themselves, but they're going to make some, they're going to gain so much by just having that type of control over the situation. And then the last principle is why you are in charge. So I know this seems to contradict, right? Didn't I just say give up some control? But yes, you give up some control, but boundaries are always very, very important. You are the leader in this. You are the manager, you're the boss, and you need to set clear boundaries in order for your child to be able to learn in this safe space, and in order for them to have this freedom to be able to grow. So clear boundaries are not at all about restriction. They're about providing the freedom and opportunity to learn. So I'm just going to go over the first principle tonight briefly. Be positive. And let's see, yeah, we're getting close on time, but this is the last thing I'll do. So, and this principle, honestly, is, I think, the most important one in the whole protocol and in the whole healing journey, because, and actually, when I was starting with my daughter to make healthy changes, and I talked to our holistic nutritionist, she told me, don't feel bad about the changes you're making. And like, at first I was confused. I was like, of course I feel bad. I'm going to have to give her separate things at school. I'm going to have to take away all these foods that she really likes. I'm going to have to, I did feel bad. But then I realized, right, why should I feel bad? I should feel good. I'm going to be helping her body to feel better. I'm taking away these things. We thought they were good. And I'm going to tell her too, I know you love these foods, and we thought they were good. I was giving them to you. I thought they were so good. I was so happy you loved them. But it turns out I learned something crazy. It's not actually as good as we thought. And actually, it's making your body do all these crazy things. You teach them about gut health. You teach them the whole, story. And you don't feel bad about taking it away. You feel good because you're going to be helping your child so much by making these small changes. So that is just so key. The attitude is honestly everything. To be positive, when you're going through this process of making changes. There was another. Okay, so also on the other side, fear. Many people use fear when trying to push health onto their children or their families, and what researchers have found is that doesn't actually work. And this is the type of thing that would lead to sneaking, or would lead to, you know, very short-term changes that don't last, don't stick, and it's just not going to be a lifestyle change. It's not going to. You don't need to be afraid of, you know, in general, you don't need to be afraid of your body. Our bodies are amazing, and I think it's just so important to feel positive about what our bodies can do and what we can do to help our bodies, to help our good buggies. You know, the other thing is that our attitude itself is going to help our gut bacteria and our microbiome and our healing components in our body. So positivity literally feeds the good buggies, the good bacteria. So a positive attitude or a negative stressed out mindset can actually change the conditions of the gut to an environment that either supports our good bacteria or supports our bad ones. So you go in with like a super stressed out attitude and you're cleaning out your pantry, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe, oh, I can't give her, what am I going to give her? And you're just super stressed out, nervous. And then that you transfer that stress onto your children. You might be getting rid of the toxic ingredients, but you're adding in this toxic stress, which is adding a new layer of inflammation to your, it's another one of those pricks we talked about with inflammation. So be careful, you know, be careful to not sacrifice one for the other, because our health is made up of many, many things and not just food. These are just some tips on how to change our wording or to change our language when we're talking about either ingredients or foods or different things with our kids. So instead of like saying, oh, this is all junk, don't even think about it, you explain to them in a positive way, empowering way, you know, this stuff looks so good on the outside, but it's made from things that feed our bad buggies. Remember what happens when our bad buggies get strong? Let's look for some good buggy food instead. Let's see who can find some first. Things like that. Just something that's going to empower them instead of make them feel. Also, if you're giving a supplement, probiotics, instead of like, you need to take this, or let's just get it over with, you could say things like, oh, make it fun, make it playful. You know, they're kids. Your good buggies are asking for more soldiers. Help them, you know, and kids, it's amazing to see how it clicks. They really, it also turns them into a helper. So it gives them a chance. It's not just about them. It's about their good buggies inside of them. It's like a pet, you know, they have to feed their pet. They have to help their good buggies that are inside their body, that are helping their whole body run smoothly. And now just this last point on, again, on positivity, I kind of mentioned, but remember that food is not everything, and our relationships with each other are just as important to our mental and physical health as the food we take in, and stress can damage the microbiome just like food can. So calm, stable support and positive vibes also play a role in healing and supporting the microbiome. I know it's running late, but if anybody had any questions, I figured I would take a moment here.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So first of all, you're incredible. Thank you so much. We do have a lot of questions, so everybody stick around. We have a lot of questions. I also wanted to share that everything you just shared about positivity is also discussed in many different ways and forms in this incredible book called Positivity Bias by Raymond Kalmanson. So everyone can, it discusses positivity from a very great and all around discussion on it. So I definitely suggest everybody to check it out.
I'm going to check that out.
Okay, so I have some questions for you.
Sure.
Let's start. So the first one is, can you share, and I think you kind of did in one of the slides, but there was a question about if you could share some more symptoms. People are trying to see if they see that in their children, some more symptoms that you saw in your daughter. I think you discussed in the slide, and there's more questions, but.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So the moodiness was a big one, the mood swings, tantrums, the sensory symptoms was huge. She, another thing, she had started actually like reacting more to allergens. Like she started developing these seasonal allergies. And also, I didn't mention this one, but she had developed some food allergies that I didn't even know about. They were kind of mild, but like she actually had like reactions to a bunch of different fruits. This is also when you talk about how certain healthy foods can, are not always right, but certain fruits, it's something called oral allergy syndrome, where she was allergic not to the fruit itself, but to the pollen from the fruit. And it would make her tongue itch a bunch of different types of fruits, unless they were cooked. If you cook them, it actually denatures the pollen, so you can eat it no problem. And after we, apples was actually one of the fruits that happened with, and I was just cooking them for a long time. And then like, I think like the next year, I just didn't stop cooking them because I figured that was it. But after going through this whole gut healing journey and everything, and I think it was like Rosh Hashanah, and my daughter had a not cooked apple. She just tried it. She just wanted to try it. And of course, I want her to get to know her body, and it didn't itch anymore. And it was like, I as the healing continued, even more components, because, once her body cooled down to the point where it wasn't reacting to every single thing that goes in, a lot of allergies will cool off too. So that's a big one. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is an important question. Another thing was breath. Her breath was off, and that's often related to, now I know the reason for it, the candida or certain strains of bacteria. Basically when you have a bacterial overgrowth in your gut, it could be in your gut, and it also pops out in these symptoms through your body. So it came out onto her in her throat, her tongue. That's where she had like this cough that was coming from, and the breath was bad because of the candida kind of living in that space, going into that space. She also had some vaginal itching, which I went to the pediatrician about 3 different times. Honestly, I'm not even kidding. Every time they said it's nothing. They even did a urine culture, nothing. But it turned out that was also candida. Those were the main symptoms. Oh, also in terms of sensitivities, like she was very reactive to certain chemicals, like even like the cleaning solutions that they used at schools, like her in the middle of the day, like I remember I had to take her home one day because her eyes just got so puffy, and then I brought her home and it went away. And she was just very overly reactive to many, many, many different things. That's basically some of the symptoms that we encountered. But it could come up in, right, if I'll also, I could, well, I'm not sure if I could share it. I'll see if I could share this with you guys too, so you could review it.
I was going to say, that was one of the questions. Could we, could you possibly share the slides with us?
I can. Yeah. I'll figure, yeah. I'll email it or something. Or maybe, I wonder if I could, yeah, I might be able to post it even in a link in the chat. Let me actually just try that quick.
Okay, so someone mentioned about a holistic nutritionist. How do you have one that, I mean, you mentioned it afterwards, but that was one of the questions that was asked during the process. How to find one, if you have any advice. And another question, which is very similar, is what advice do you have in relation to probiotics for kids?
Great question. So in terms of finding a holistic practitioner, so there are some resources online. Honestly, I feel the best way to find somebody is often word of mouth, because there's just many different types of holistic practitioners and different types of certifications. There's not like one unifying body like there is in medicine. So it's a little bit hard to find. There are websites. You could use IFM to find like a functional medicine provider. They have like a find a provider resource on their website, on IFM. If you search IFM, it's the Institute of Functional Medicine. But honestly, like I said, I think like word of mouth, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, if you have any friends that are into natural health, if they work with somebody, like oftentimes just that's the best way. I could also share the name, because now even a lot of people are doing Zoom consults. So it's actually, I think, even easier than before to find somebody. But I worked with Henya Lazar. She is her company is called Real Health and Fitness. She's amazing. She's really great. And she also does do Zoom consults. So I could share her information too, if you'd like.
Thank you. Okay, so there was another question. My kids don't have any refined sugars ever. Can you tell us
Oh,
more?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I forgot the second half of your question was about probiotics. I don't want to skip over it. Sorry. So in terms of probiotics, I did tons of research too, because that was obviously a big part of the healing journey, right? Adding in the good bacteria. There are certain strains that are good at different, for certain conditions, different points in healing. But ultimately, all of the probiotics today are powders, capsules. They're nothing like the fermented foods that our ancestors were eating. So they have, you've probably heard the term like the CFU count. They put like billions of these CFUs into these powders because most of them won't even survive. They're powder. They're so weak, they're not living, actively culturing a food. So they are, that was one of my issues. And also I didn't like that I had to always like the high quality, those powders, you have to like mix it with something else. And then it's like, you feel like you're giving your kid medicine and you're hiding health, like you're sneaking in their food and then they feel like you're, poisoning them or something, like I just never, I didn't like it. It didn't sit right with me that I'm like hiding things, I actually developed, over the past year, I've been working on developing my own probiotic. And it's actually just very recently, it just finally is launching. And it's called Good Buggies Probiotics. Actually, I have, I'll put this screen up. It's just my resources over here. But goodbuggiesprobiotics.com, and you can read about it. It's a true fermented food-based probiotic because there was nothing out there at all like it. I mean, literally nothing except for true fermented foods. And I wasn't, most kids don't like the taste of sauerkraut, raw fermented sauerkraut and kimchi. And, they're not going to get into that right away, at least, or even after a while. So I developed this fermented food-based probiotic. It's live and active. It's really high quality, only organic ingredients. And it comes in like a single serve packet. So it's ready to eat right away. And it's fun. It's not hiding health. It's really high quality. So I recommend that as well.
That is awesome. Thank you. There's also a question. Can you tell us about the sugar in the ingredients list? I understand it helps the fermenting process, but I'm still wondering if it's beneficial to give them something with sugar.
You're talking about on my probiotic. Okay, so yes. So my on Good Buggies probiotics, yes, the sugar, I do have some organic sugar in the product. However, it is used for keeping the cultures alive. So once we put them in the packet, they need food to survive. And bacteria breaks down, even in vegetables, what they do is they break down the starches, the sugars of whatever food it is. So they're actively breaking it down while it's in the package. So it's possible that, that the sugars in the product are not even, we write the amount of sugar at the time of packaging, but it's possible that some of them are even still broken down by the time that they get to you. Is it better to have something without sugar? It's totally individual. There are some cases where it's super important to, I guess, avoid it more so than others. However, the compounds in this probiotic, so we use the fermented food that we use is SCOBY. It's a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. And there's been a lot of research on it lately, actually really new research on its benefits as a probiotic food. And it actually even helps with things like blood sugar regulation and things like that. So I think it counteracts, but of course, every case is different. So, you make your own judgment on that.
Thank you. There was also a question. Throughout your process of changing your daughter's diet, did the nutritionist check her fecal sample for dysbiosis again?
Like a follow-up test. We didn't feel the need to test again because I saw the results in front of my eyes, honestly. And I think that's a really important skill to learn too. Like, I think in the beginning, it is super important to find out what's really going on inside. I think it's very helpful, actually. But then I think it's also really helpful to be to know your own body the best, and to really get to know your body. And you'll know when something is resolved and when it's not. You'll know by the symptoms that are coming out or that aren't coming out. If you're feeling good, then oftentimes you're good. So we did not repeat testing.
A next one is, which I think a lot of people are waiting for this. Can you please give us some specific healthy menus, some supper ideas, examples of healthy snacks? Like, now we know what we shouldn't have. Can you help us, even if you just send us to another, not a lot, but like a book or somewhere where we could go, and how can we change our life that way?
Oh, that's such a great question. I learned a lot from my mother-in-law, actually. And I recommend, honestly, more than any meal plan or anything, asking your parents, if you can, your grandparents, for like their traditional recipes, because oftentimes they're exactly what you need. Like, for example, like, traditional bone broths are super, super healing. A lot of those soups, different things like that. Whatever, I think that's like a great place to start. But in general, right, if you want to make a meal plan and start getting some good meals going for your family, that is a good question. You're removing all these things. Now, what do we eat? The answer is really to just go, or whatever, I guess, groceries that you would be buying out, shop the perimeter of the grocery store, buy fruits, vegetables, get your meat or chicken, fish, the perimeter of the store. So I personally like doing a lot of like one pot dishes where like the vegetable cooks within the, like, simmers on the pot with like the chicken or the meat or whatever it is, the fish. But I think it's all personal taste. But actually, there's tons of books. There are so many books. Like, I don't even know which way to lead you. There's a lot of books on like leaky gut or gut healing plans, or actually anti-inflammatory diets. That's kind of what we followed in a sense. And I actually think Henya Lazar, I think she has like an ebook of, oh yes, she does. She has an ebook of recipes. I believe let me see if I could send you. I think if you go on her website, I think it's realhealthfitness.com. Let me just go to it so that I could, or maybe Real Health. Let's see if this is it. I'm sorry. I hope it is. No. Real Health Fit. I think Real Health Fit. Yes, this is it. Okay. Yes. And she has, I think, on here, yeah, free healthy dinner recipes. Look at that. Perfect. So put in your email and she sends you, like, I think it's a PDF of 10 healthy, kosher, gluten-free meals. Awesome. So you can go to this site. I'll post this. I'm trying to go to the comments so that I could, how do I get to the, do you know how to get to the messenger?
If you want, also you could share it with me and I'll send it out.
Perfect.
With everybody, and I'll also attach it to our to the YouTube afterwards.
Okay, great.
Another question was, you mentioned bad breath. Doing all these things, is that going to help? What's something that somebody could do in regards to bad breath?
Yeah, healing the gut health is going to help with that, because you're just basically killing off those bad yeast or bad bacteria wherever they're living. They're living in the gut, migrating to different parts of your body. But when you heal the gut, it's going to take care of those symptoms too. So in our case, and in many cases that I've read about, the bad breath goes away from healing the gut.
In regards to cleaning supplies and how to where's a resource where we can go and look for supplies or just advice about where to, make those small tweaks in our home?
Yes, such a great question. And so overlooked often. So it's a really good question. It's actually a lot of cleaning supplies can be pretty simply made, or not made, but like using, like you can clean your floors with vinegar, just a vinegar and water instead of like buying, whatever floor cleaner. You could use really like also my friend gave me a tip. You could get like even a steam mop that you don't have to use any type of material like on the whatever on the floor. In terms of brands, you can go to this if you want to ever like check a product, you can go to EWG. They have like a whole resource where you can search different products and see how they're graded based on what type of toxins or whatever they have inside. Also, my cousin actually in Brooklyn, she has an Instagram, Healthy Brooklyn Mom, and she posts about this kind of stuff all the time. If you want to follow her, she always is talking about like clean products, and it's like she's very passionate about it, and she gives like a lot of recommendations just about things that she likes, finds, and uses. So you can go to her also. I'll show you. Let's see. Oops. Oh, maybe I did it wrong.
In the meantime,
yeah, go ahead.
Somebody asked, are you familiar with toxin removal?
Toxin removal. Well, you mean in maybe there's like a specific program you're referring to, or?
I'm not sure if that was
the question. So yeah, toxin removal. There are all types of toxins that do need to, or maybe like in terms of detoxing or things like that. Yeah, we are inundated with toxins. So I think supporting the body's detox organs is a really effective, is a really, really good thing to do. So for example, the liver is one of the main organs in our body that's involved in detoxing. And what happens is it can get very backed up and it can be very sluggish because of all the stuff that it has to detox. So if you can add in like liver support, like things like, you could do it in many ways. Either herbs like milk thistle, dandelion are very, very helpful for the liver. Or that you could do, there's also supplements that directly target the liver, like glutathione and things like that. But if you want to just support the liver, you can, those herbal ways are really, really helpful.
And then I think somebody mentioned also there's a place called Think Dirty. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Think Dirty. That's a great, yes, that's a great, I think that might be by EWG, like or maybe the list. Yeah, it's some type of list. Oh, is this? No, I don't know. Okay. Oh, maybe it's a really good resource. Yeah.
And then the person who asked about the follow-up on the testing was just wondering, I mean, I'm not sure if it's a question per se, but she was just wondering if it, like, in a certain sense, how do we know that maybe it could have been something else that helped your daughter?
So in my case personally, there's literally no other thing. It was the timeline of it was exactly, it was the same for a very, very long time. The same, trying all different types of things, no budging. And then we started, in terms of our, how we started healing, we changed the diet, removed a bunch of foods, added in healing foods, but we also started her on an antifungal because her problem was candida yeast. So that's a type of fungus. So there are herbal ways to treat fungus, and there are more medicine type ways, but basically we started antifungal, and at the same time as all of that, and like immediately, literally, like I'm talking about 2 days later, after being on this antifungal, we noticed a 180. It was like that insane, like that there was no question about it. And then of course, the more we went, the more healing could come out, because first you kill, right? It's not just the bacteria, it's the bacterial overgrowth, which caused the body to be on fire, this chronic inflammation. So then it does take time still to cool off all that inflammation over time. But for me, it was clear as day. There was absolutely no question that this was what it was, and it wasn't something else.
You're amazing. Okay, so our last question for tonight is, are there any safe ways to cleanse candida during pregnancy? Because fungal cleanses are not safe during pregnancy, which is also tied to what are ways during pregnancy that I can support and clean my liver? Because many people deal with liver issues during pregnancy.
Wow, such a great question. Yeah, and the reason why candida is oftentimes, right, I guess it wouldn't be recommended to clear it out during pregnancy, is because when the candida dies off, there's something called the die-off effect, or the Herxheimer reaction, which is when it leaves the body, or when it starts to die, it actually releases toxins as it's dying. And then that's a lot of toxins for the body to have to clear out. And if it's not clearing out, it's getting into, you don't want to be releasing toxins into your body, of course, when you're pregnant. So it's definitely this is something that I would for sure try to talk to some type of holistic practitioner that you trust to guide you specifically, because depending on either underlying conditions or if you're healthy, different things might be implicated. So, everyone, even in terms of like what you could do during pregnancy, and not everyone is so different, but it's definitely worth asking the question, because die-off is not necessarily a good thing. Like people think like, oh, good, I'm having these die-off symptoms, I must be killing a lot of candida, but you really want to do it slowly, because you don't want to create that burden on your body and on your liver. So maybe that practitioner could help you find a way to clear it out naturally and very slowly, while supporting your liver, supporting your body at the same time, or in a really gentle way. That's definitely worth looking into. And really, really a good question. And there, even if you can't do necessarily a candida cleanse during a pregnancy, you could definitely, there's no contraindications to supporting your microbiome. So I would recommend in pregnancy, eat tons of fermented foods. There are some brands in the store now, not in the regular jar aisle, but like in the refrigerated section, there's like Wild Brine is kosher. Also Bubbies is a kosher brand. They have pickles that are truly raw and fermented. You want to look for the ingredients that it doesn't have vinegar, that it's basically in like a saltwater brine, or just like, that it says usually on the package, it'll usually say that it's like raw and fermented. Another brand, there's Wild Brine. You'll see there are a few brands out there now in the refrigerated section of the supermarket of some fermented foods. So that I would definitely eat those throughout the pregnancy.
Wow, this was incredible. Thank you so much, Alana.
So
I wanna tell everyone, for starters, start preparing. We're about to take a picture, and also I wanted to share that Mitzvah Hashem, in a few weeks, we are having a midwife who's also going to discuss this from the perspective of pregnancy and how that whole thing plays out. So she's gonna, some of the questions, if you have more questions in regards to that, we'll be talking about that. And then Alana, if you can, other than the resources we see on here, I guess you can share any other resources that you think people could get more information.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to share again that Alana's book is incredible. Let Kids Be Kids, The Parent's Guide to Gut Health. So if you're looking for more information on this, you can check out her book. And I have to say, the Buggies in Bella's belly is so beautiful and powerful. And it's such a great way to bring this to your children.